kind of got to the point, experience dictates that when Dave King speaks, sometimes it's better not to pay too much attention because he has got a tendency to just open his mouth and let his belly rumble. He says some outlandish stuff, and there's a lot of bombast involved more often than not. But there was a couple of things that he said today that were interesting, and you know, let's start from the fact that he's been involved in this from its inception, basically, in talks with Andrew Kavanagh. I think it was good that his ego allowed him to confirm that you know it wasn't his idea, that it was Paul Murray that brought Andrew Kavanagh to the table. I think Paul Murray has played quite a central role in bringing a lot of the things together, and I think he deserves a bit of credit for that, because as complicated as this has been, I'm not sure it would have been doable without a guy like Paul Murray who's able to speak to various people in various camps and try and, you know, bring things together. So that's interesting. But the biggest point of all, and the most important of all, from what Dave King said today, it wasn't really detail about the deal, and you know, apart from the fact that he now thinks that completion might be, you know, put back a little bit until even mid-June, which is a lot later than the Americans would have expected or anticipated or wanted it to be from the start, and far from ideal in terms of planning for next season, and we've discussed that over and over, Dan. But I found what was really interesting was an admission from Dave King that the club has been badly run by, you know, what he would call Rangers fans, or what he did call Rangers fans. Now, unfortunately for Rangers, and this is what's caused part of the delay as well, the relationships have broken down to such an extent within the boardroom, and, you know, with guys like King and guys that are still in there, like Douglas Park, for example. It is so toxic that has led to further complicate these current negotiations with Americans. Mm-hmm. It's caused issues all the way through, because there's so many egos, personalities. Everybody's looking to see what they can get that's better than the next guy, and it's made this deal. You know, it was already complex. It's made it, you know, 5-dimensional chess at times, I think. But in Dave King's, and I think he was really firing one at Douglas Park when he said, you know, it's been run badly. Rangers supporters shouldn't be running a club of that size because they're too emotional, too reactionary, lose one game one weekend, they want to change the manager, sell the players. And I think he's absolutely right, but I think he's equally, that same accusation is equally attributable to Dave King during his time as chairman. Mm-hmm. And I think it's entirely right. And Daniel, if you remember, months and months ago, earlier this season, I was saying the only thing that's going to fix Rangers is regime change. And it was for exactly that reason, that the inside of it had become so broken that these guys weren't going to be able to put it back together again. And it needed fresh leadership, new ideas, you know, something contemporary. And basically what you've got here is Dave King admitting that Rangers have been run like a corner shop over the last decade or so. And clearly Andrew Kavanagh and the Americans want to turn it into a Walmart. And that's the important thing. And it couldn't be done. The Rangers were directionless. They weren't going anywhere. They were stuck in a rut, and they weren't going to get themselves out of it unless there was regime change. And that's what they're about to get. And you can tell what was another key strand of what Dave King was saying was there was never any doubting that these guys have got serious financial muscle, clout behind them. But he did say, you know, they've got deeper pockets, and he did say that, as you would, that he looked for proof of funding. And I think that proof of funding would have been very, very, very straightforward, even though we're talking big numbers, lottery numbers and beyond. I think it would have been very easy for that to be proved. And I don't even think that Andrew Kavanagh would necessarily have needed the wealth of the 49ers to give that proof of funding. I think that he's a considerably wealthy guy, and he's, you know, on his own, but he's being backed by the 49ers and the York family and the sort of, so the funding is there, the ideas are there. I don't think there's going to be even with all of that, I look at it now and I look ahead to next season. I see where Rangers are in terms of, I don't think there's any proper planning being done. They don't even know what the situation is with, who the manager's going to be. Dave King said at the end of his interview that he doesn't even think that Americans are paying much attention to who's going to be the manager next season. That tells you they're taking a longer term approach. So I think it's going to be really difficult, stroke nigh on impossible for Rangers to get themselves into a position where they can mount a really credible title challenge against Celtic, simply on the basis that even though they've got plenty of money and loads of good ideas and contacts and networks, I just don't think they're going to have the time. So that's an interesting factor as well, isn't it? To kind of get an idea for what's likely to happen over the next wee while. But what you can say is that these guys are really credible. They've got serious financial muscle, and they've got ideas that will maybe drag Rangers kicking and screaming into a more modern era, because they'll manage to take control away from a regime which it wasn't just broken, it was shattered into pieces.
Mm-hmm. We've got comments coming in thick and fast. If you want to get involved, please let us know your opinions in the comment section below. This one, Keith. Kimbo says, you're talking mince. We struggled against the other 10 in the league, not Celtic. I mean...
Yeah, but they're quite significant troubles. 17 points behind. So, these are... and you consider that, you're absolutely right. Obviously, on any given day, Rangers can put up a match to Celtic. The question isn't about that. The question is, can they do it over the course of a campaign?
Exactly.
And as things stand just now, well, it's the same squad of players, just plus a few of the guys that aren't good enough to be in the squad and were farmed out on loan because of that. Mm-hmm. And that's what I'm talking about. If a manager's going to make a real difference in time for the start of next season, all the preparation work needs to be being done, weeks ago, never mind now.
Started a while ago.
Yeah, they're already way behind the 8 ball on it. So I think Rangers will be full of good intentions, big ideas, plenty of financial backing. But when you've not done your groundwork before the start of the campaign and you're trying to rush stuff through or whatever, I think it just becomes really tricky. That's why I would already consider Celtic to be favourites to win next year's title as well.
Gary Payton chimes in saying, what's the hold up with the deal with European qualifiers coming up? No manager in place yet, and takeover still a good bit away. Marzuno says, my corner shop is always fully stocked, makes a profit and anybody is welcome. Mark says, Rangers open all hours, Celtic or Walmart. This one, let me have a look. Ian McFadgen, so many words, so little said by King. A prime example of the art of waffling. And Paul says, so King is telling everyone what needs to be done to close the gap. I'm Scotland's most successful club, but he couldn't do it himself. And Stephen Curry says he wants to leave with a bag full of cash. He and the rest of the board are fed up pouring money into the black hole and getting nothing out of it. So Rangers fans and beyond are pretty opinionated when it comes to Dave King.
Yeah, well, he's a bit of a Marmite character, isn't he?
Yeah.
In fact, from personal experience, I can tell you he's a hard guy to like. So, and I think he winds Celtic fans up as well. He antagonises them, and you can see that from some of the comments there. He's not a warm character. He's got a habit of saying things that make you wince a little bit sometimes. And that's why I'm saying, Daniel, over the period you kind of learn. Sometimes you just switch off a little bit because there's a lot of noise. But I think some of the things that he said today were actually very interesting, and I'll give him that.
This comment as well, Jim says, Keith, there's work happening behind the scenes. You think people are sitting twiddling their thumbs, waiting the deal to be signed off? I mean, if you allow me, Keith, I'll maybe reply to that as well.
Okay.
We've not got a manager.
That would be point number one.
Exactly. So, all well and good, Jim. I'm sure they're looking at players and whatever, but what if you appoint a manager and he goes, nah, I don't like any of them, or I want this player or whatever? You can't really plan to put a team in the field that's going to challenge Celtic if you've not got a manager?
Jimbo would probably, respond by saying something like, I'm sure that Rangers have already behind the scenes got their new manager lined up, and he's given them a list of players to targets, and maybe that's true, but I've heard nothing at all to make me feel that that is the case. I think on the football side of it, it's all up in the air. It remains up in the air.